Good morning, good morning. Today I have Damian Connelly from Sakura Business Solutions here with me today. So first and foremost, Damian, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on. Great to be here.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I think all of our listeners know the drill when it comes to the Ignite Talks podcast. We like to get deep and meaningful about business and the business owners, what makes them tick, what their ideal and who their ideal clients are, why they do what they do. So let's get to it. I did say the name of your business, but Sakura Business Solutions, and you sort of shortened to Sakura in terms of your logo and your brand. So tell us a little bit about the name, what it means, and what was the inspiration for it? Because it's very, very different. And I suppose for people who don't know you, you're in the accounting world, let's say, rather than just saying you're an accountant, because there's more to it, which we'll get to. But where did the name come from? What was the inspiration?
So Sakura is actually a Japanese word and it means cherry blossom. So I've been to Japan a few times and I also used to speak a little bit of Japanese as well. And so that word sort of, I always appreciate the word. I always quite liked it. And then having been to Japan as well, I've kind of gotten a sense from Japanese people about what it means. And usually it's quite a positive, it's a nice image. So it's about picnicking in the sunshine under sakura trees. It's generally like a sunny summer's or spring summer day. So I just feel it's always been a very positive word. It's a nice word. It's got an element of pink running through it. And so I sort of thought at the time, if I ever set a business up, I'd love to use the word in the name. And given that accountants tend to be viewed as being quite boring and quite samey, I thought if I set up an accountancy business and called it a Sakura, surely that'd be a little bit different from maybe more traditional accountants and be a bit more positive and more interesting than say Connelly and Co. So that's how I came up with the name, and as it's got pink, it's got nice sort of bright imagery about it. So
Mm.
again, just hopefully adds that slightly different view of us as accountants, maybe than from more traditional
Mm.
accountants.
Yeah, well, I think you definitely achieved that, and it is gorgeous. You know, it is. It's not just the pink because I'm female and the pink, but there's a lovely brightness and airiness to it, which I think is unusual, as you say, because most accounting firms are XYZ accountants and co, or XYZ accountants, auditors. You know, it's all very samey, whereas this is definitely something that stands out, and what could be more beautiful than cherry blossom. So the fact that you've revealed the little nugget of information that you speak a bit of Japanese, can you say a few words? And of course, you'll have to translate and tell us what you said. Now
You're
I'm putting you
testing me
on the
now because I haven't spoken any since 2019 when I was at the World Cup in Japan. Konnichiwa. Ailalanda Jin desu. So konnichiwa obviously means hello, and the second phrase is I am Irish. So that's probably about all I can do at the moment without a little bit of revision.
spot.
But I used to find I could make myself reasonably well understood. The problem with the challenge is that I struggle to understand anything anyone said to me.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Well, it always takes time for our ears to get used to languages and to get that whole sort of that vibe going on. Maybe by the end of it, a couple of other phrases will have come to mind. So feel free to share later on and let you percolate on that in
Okay.
the back of your head. No pressure at all. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your own background and family and what got you, because we're all the sum total of different chapters and we all have journeys. And prior to Sakura being set up, who were
Mhm.
you? What did you do? What did all of that look like? What's the background?
So I'll try and do maybe a bit of a whistle stop tour. So I'm from Dublin. I currently live in London. So Sakura had an office in London, our main office is there, but also then we have a practice and a number of clients over in Dublin. So for me, it works quite well because I travel over and back quite often, and allows me then to visit family and friends, go to a few Leinster matches. But originally from Dublin, I qualified as an accountant in a local practice in Dublin. And actually, when I was in school, I sort of wanted to be a historian, actually. I was really into history and I did a number of projects on particular historical figures. Well, I was in school ahead of the Celtic Tiger, so my parents told me in no uncertain terms that I had to get a qualification that would allow me to be able to travel and leave Ireland, because that was probably what I was going to have to do. So I put the history on the back burner, and then decided accountancy was something I didn't hate. So I went and went down to the local firm, qualified there, and got my ACCA letters. And then after I think a year after that, then I left Ireland. So again, trying to keep it reasonably brief. I've worked offshore in the Isle of Man for a few years. I moved to Australia for a year, worked in Australia for about 12 months. I then traveled across Asia for another sort of 15, 16 months. And then I came back to Dublin for a short period of time after that, and I trained as a TEFL teacher because I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I was actually teaching in a couple of local schools during the summer months, Spanish and Italians. I was teaching them English for a number of months. And then I decided then I wanted to get back onto the wheel again. So I moved to London. And then when I was in London, I have worked with a couple of contracts when I went over there first. But then I worked with a property business as a group financial controller. They went from a small office and two companies in one office in Kingston to a £65 million turnover business with 18 companies across 4 different countries. And eventually they went through a sale process, which wasn't actually a successful one, but we went through it anyway, which was a great experience for me. Having built up the finance team and built up the structure in the business, to go through that was quite challenging for me personally, but worthwhile. And then I worked in a private equity backed marketing agency for a number of years. Again, I was the group financial controller. We did a number of international offices. We had to rebuild our finance team. So again, really, really challenging. And again, they were always going for secondary exits. So they were always selling the business. So from day one, I arrived in, it was about getting everything in order so that they could exit the business in 3 or 4 years' time. So after that experience, then that's when I decided I wanted to work for myself. And that's where Sakura came into being and where we are today.
Okay, so how long have you had Sakura then? So when did you set up the business?
So I set the business up a few years before I was actually working in it. So I was doing a little bit of part-time work. I recruited somebody to do some bookkeeping and some compliance work in it before I left my job. So I've been working in the business myself for about 9, 10 years now. And we tend to work with a lot of sort of SMEs. We do a lot of the traditional accountancy work you might be familiar with. We also are quite keen on software. So we work a lot with Xero, QuickBooks, and then there's a lot of an ecosystem around that different software for doing different things. So we focus a lot on outsourced bookkeeping, outsourced finance team structures for our growing businesses. So a little bit of a bookkeeper, a bit of a finance manager, a management accountant to put that package together for clients. And then what I tend to do is I spend more time then doing what I used to do, which is fractional CFO, probably for sort of £1 million, €1 million businesses and above. And then more recently, because of my experience of working in a privately owned business that was going through an exit process, but then also working in a private equity business, a private equity backed business that was always going for an exit. That's quite a challenging but an interesting area to get into. And so I sort of focus more of my time on that area as well for SMEs who have probably never thought about it, or maybe don't really know where to start. I can sort of bring them along that journey and that roadmap.
Yeah. And tell me this then, you worked for a lot of big companies, so obviously that was going to give you security and stability. It gave you the challenge, the opportunity to earn well. So for a lot of people, that'd be tick, 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 in abundance. What was it that made you say, do you know what, I need to step out and do this for myself?
I think I'd always fancied myself as being a bit of an entrepreneur underneath the accountant exterior. So I kind of thought it'd be a nice thing for me to do and a challenge for me to do. But also having worked in, bigger businesses, but some of them were quite small when I started working with them. They grew quite fast over a period of time. So I guess the thing that I really identified was that my job is predominantly about putting finance teams into place, building a finance team, building out the structures, pushing them through the business, putting all the software, the finance systems, etc., in place. And I was always surprised by how much it changed the business. It changed the culture of the business. It changed how the business operated. And actually, in many cases, it supercharged the business. So whereas it was growing, because typically we're quite good at sales and marketing, once you get the finance structure in place and a really good professional, robust finance team, it really changes the culture and the ability of the business to grow really, really dramatically. So having seen that a couple of times, then I thought, well, actually, there's a lot of smaller businesses, SMEs, maybe not startups, but sort of growing businesses who aren't in the 5, 10, 15, 20 million pound turnover bracket, but actually they have a vision, they have a nice little business, they've got, they want to go somewhere with the business. And if they only knew some of the things and took on board some of the things that bigger businesses do, but actually aren't very tricky for smaller businesses to take on board, then it would really change how they operated, change their business. In some cases, change their life. Because if you could suddenly
isn't it a real catch-22 situation? There's all of this stuff they could be doing that would literally give them freedom, peace of mind, headspace, all of that. But when you're in the solo, micro, very, very small, there's both the money, financial issue, but then there's also the bandwidth issue, which is mindset, which is emotional, psychological, and physical. There's all of that comes with it. And people are so busy doing and just treading water, trying to get things done. And yet there's that gap between, well, if you just change a few things, or if you just maneuver this a little bit, it's going to give you so much more time and energy back. And as you said, it's I suppose a step change that allows for freedom and for a happier life overall, really, isn't it?
Well, that's probably what you set your business up to do. You've had a vision of doing some good work, working with some nice people, and hopefully starting to change your life and your ability to earn. And I think a lot of business owners, myself included, to a certain extent, you kind of get stuck in the detail and you don't look up. And actually, having done it a few times with larger businesses, once you get a lot of finance structures and some of the finance mentalities embedded in the business, it really does change the business.
Yeah.
It changes your ability to manage and drive your business. Because if you haven't got the core information you need, then of course you can't make the right decisions because there's too much in the way. And then you end up spending more and more time and losing some of your momentum because you seem like you're going around in circles. Whereas at least if you can get to that stage where you know where your income is coming from, you know what's profitable, not profitable, you know which customers are good customers, you know how to manage your costs, you know how much cash is in the bank, that gives you the ability to start making decisions rather than making reactive decisions. And if you can make the right decisions at the right time, that's then when you make the step change, and then allows you to make the next decision, all of which then pushes your business in the right direction and helps to grow it, which then allows you to recruit more people, to recruit your PA, to recruit your more senior people, then build out your management team, and then everything starts to roll in the right direction.
So tell me this then. What, for people who are starting up, people who are, they're a year, 2 years into it, but they're still stuck doing the doing, working in the business, as opposed to taking and understanding the value of taking time out, whether it's networking, to work on the business and seeing life and business in it from a different lens, a different perspective. What are some of the, and it's not to say give us the whole list, but, I'm sure you will have seen trends of consistent errors that you see people make because they don't know what they don't know and they don't know any better. And it's getting that professional advice or a different viewpoint or perspective. So what are some of the sort of key mistakes that you consistently see people and business owners making? And what advice would you give to somebody starting or who's near enough to the start of their journey where they have time to maneuver and push things in the right direction? What advice would you give them in terms of, here are certain metrics or KPIs or certain reports you need to set up from the start to make sure you are able to make good decisions?
Well, I would say just get the basics right first. because you can't build on you can't build on sand. So if you don't get the basics right, then you can't do the more interesting and the more valuable stuff.
So what are the basics
Basic.
for the uninitiated?
So the basics are just, do your bookkeeping, maybe not day in, day out, but week in, week out, month in, month out. Make sure that you're recording all of your sales, make sure you're recording all your costs, make sure you're putting your payroll details in, do the basics as well as you can. And if you can't do them well enough, maybe that's the place to start investing in some accountancy or some finance help. Because at least if you get that done, it doesn't build up, because that's the big challenge, is that people leave it and then suddenly you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks of bank transactions and an invoice from suppliers. And then you've got to invest a weekend to do it, which means you're not doing anything else. And also, if you don't do it every week, or if you leave it to a couple of months at a time, you forget, particularly if you're not an accountant, you forget how you post this invoice here or how you deal with that bank transaction there. So again, it sort of snowballs into something that becomes much bigger than it needs to be. Whereas if you just do the simple things really well, then it doesn't become a drama. You're still familiar enough with your account system to do it relatively quickly. The numbers are relatively small for you to process through, so it takes an hour or two, not a day or two. And also means then you can see quite clearly how much cash is in your bank account. So it either means you can sleep at night rather than worry about these things, and clears your mind. But also means then you can see invoices that need to be paid by customers. You can see your turnover rising over a period of time. You can start to see where costs look a little bit higher than maybe you're expecting. And it means you get your VAT returns done quicker. So instead of having that big stress and that big, oh my God, the VAT period's coming up again, or the end of year is coming again, it becomes part of your regular, I'm just doing my normal week, I'm just doing my normal month, and everything becomes, certainly emotionally and probably in practice as well, a little bit easier and less stressful and dramatic. If you do that as a starting point, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it all makes sense. It would be a great idea for budding business owners, aspiring business owners, even if they're before the point of being able to afford the accountant or the bookkeeper, even to do a consultative session with somebody and sort of say, tell me what I need to have, what is the setup, what is the order of things I need to do. I think there's something that business owners, and I know there's lots of different courses through, in Ireland, the local enterprise offices and what have you, but I know for somebody like me, I actually need the one-on-one time. When I'm doing anything, that's what I need. And I'm sure there's loads of people like me. My other half would say, just go onto YouTube. And I'm going, well, I can't go onto YouTube and go, dear YouTube, I'm not sure what my question is, but give me the answer, please. And I'm going, that just won't work. Whereas if I'm watching, I'm going, right, why is this here? Why is that? Then I'm learning. Now, I will also admit that when it comes to the finance or VAT, I understand it in the moment and I might have completely blocked it out by the next day, but I'm growing my understanding. But I need that sort of interaction. It's just how I learn on anything. It's just I'll ask the questions in the moment, and then it just speeds up my I suppose consumption and ingestion of the information. But I think it's really good advice. Get the basics right, get it set up, and talk to somebody who can help you get it set up so that you're set up for success, not for worry, because that will be a huge thing in terms of liberating. And I think it's something that is completely underestimated for people starting businesses as well, is a lot of people start up their business because they have a passion project, a passion topic, an area of expertise. But very often, like somebody like me, you're coming from a corporate background where you had an area that you looked at, but somebody else did accounting and bookkeeping and HR and marketing and all the other bits, and then you suddenly set up a company and you're going, I am all of these people now. And then you realize, crap, I actually don't know anything about all these other aspects, but I better learn quickly. And then you're trying to be all things to all people all of the time, and it's overwhelming and stressful. And then what happens to an awful lot of people is nothing happens, and going, that's not a good way of dealing with it. So I'd love for people to take away from this, get your basics right. But if I were looking back and if I were to do things again, I would say, right, like marketing and accounting, all the different bits, go and talk to somebody who's an expert who can help you set up how you do things to get you going. pay that money up front, because it will save you so much time and heartache down the line. And as you grow, and as your wherever your strength is in terms of your expertise, is you channel your energy there, because that's what you should be doing, and bit by bit outsourcing all of the other bits that is stuff that you probably don't like doing. If you like dealing with people, you're probably not, so hot about liking getting into the weeds of admin and Excel sheets, So it's getting the right skill set, but allowing yourself to manage and hone in on your zone of genius, I suppose, as it were. But you talked about nice clients earlier, and this is a big thing for me. It's like we're too long at the tooth now to be dealing with lots of people. So let's talk about ideal clients. Who are your ideal clients? And I'm going to start off by sort of saying, we want to work with nice people who value what we do, who are sound of mind. And I say that from the point of view of they're willing to learn. They've got that growth mindset and sort of open heart. And people might say, what's that got to do with business? Well, when you get crappy emails and irate people the other side who don't have a clue and don't know what they're talking about, then you realize open heart, open mind has a lot to do with it, and how we show up and how we treat other people. So who are your ideal clients?
So I try and work with people that I like, people that I can get on with. I also try and work with people who I think either have no understanding of finance or accountancy and just want someone then to look after the basics and keep them on track, which is great because that gives a bit of freedom to be able to do things. Or people who want a bit more involvement but understand that it's slightly outside of their comfort zone or their knowledge zone, and then so therefore they are a bit appreciative of the fact that there's certain things need to be done and done in a certain way, but we'll try and sort of work with them and keep them in the loop and keep them clear about what it means and how it impacts them. But I guess to get into more detail is we want. Personally, I like working with sort of £1 million, €1 million businesses because that gives them a bit more complexity, gives them a bit more of the ability to maybe pay some more fees towards putting the right finance structures, the right software in place, or putting the right systems in place, which all cost money but has a benefit later on down the road. But generally, I think a business that kind of understands that there's a certain cost and a certain value to having the right finance team, the right bookkeeping done, maybe some management accounts. They say that, maybe it's just accountants say, but they say that any business should be paying about 3% of their turnover on their finance structures, because that then matches quite nicely with their needs in terms of finance. So
that's a really good benchmark to have. So 3%. Okay.
3%. Sometimes they say 3 to 4%, but 3% including software and people and consultancy and so on. And I don't know who came up with that, but that seems to be the benchmark that people use across the sector. But I think it's about understanding that just like you have to invest in a certain element of marketing, you've got to invest in a certain amount of sales. It's the same with finance. And I think business owners who don't have that mindset are not the sort of people that we tend to work with. So I think, again, people don't always have maybe the same view I have, but at least they have an understanding that there's a value, there's a benefit, there's a future benefit, and there's a certain amount of they just need someone who looks after the basics, can provide them with the information they need and take some of the risk away. Then that's quite a nice line for us.
So all business owners need an accountant or bookkeeper at some point, regardless. But are there particular verticals that you like working with? You've talked about some of your own experience around property and was it wealth or equity management? You've talked about sort of different areas that you've had experience in. Are there particular areas that you prefer to work in that bring you more joy, or does it matter?
Well, I've worked in quite a number of different sectors throughout my career. So personally, I'm a bit agnostic. But I think as a business, we need to be a little bit more focused so that we get that consistency and that deeper knowledge of certain sectors. So we do have a number of sort of marketing agencies, marketing content agencies. We work with a number of legal firms, some IFAs, mortgage advisors. We work with a few property businesses. So they're the kind of business that I guess we're a bit more familiar with. We do have a couple of interesting businesses. We have an archaeology business that we work with, which is a great bunch of people, really interesting area to work in, and a couple of interior designers we work with as well, architects. So I find it interesting to work with different businesses, but I think as a business, we are working those slightly more focused areas more often than not.
Okay, so you talked earlier as well about some of the services that you offer and the products that you offer. So you're about the bookkeeping, working on the software setup. It's the fractional CFO, sort of general accounting practices. Is there anything else that you offer? Do you productize anything that you do for clients?
Well, what I've tried to do, because I advise business owners to do it, so I'm trying to do it myself, is I've tried to get myself out of the day-to-day business. So I've got a team who look after most of the compliance, the payroll, the VAT, most of the bookkeeping type work. And then what I spend more of my time is trying to use some of my historical experience, skills in certain areas. So against the fractional CFO coming into business, getting that role up and running, and reviewing their existing team, and then working on specific projects, whether that's putting in a whole new system or reorganize the system they have, working with their CRM systems. In some cases, I can be involved in a product launch, or a new business, getting that set up and making sure all of the compliance and the finance side of that is resolved. Or in some cases, I've worked in some overseas expansion, which takes a lot of planning, a lot of effort, a lot of financial management, etc. So I do quite a lot of that for SMEs at the moment. But going back to the exit planning, that's an area that I think is quite underserved generally. So not a lot of accountants will have gone through that experience. And to bear in mind is a lot of business owners have not gone through that experience, or for most of them, they'll go through it once in their career. So again, it's probably not top of their list, or maybe somewhere on their radar, but they don't really know where to start, or it's sort of buried among all of their sort of day-to-day worries and issues. So that's sort of an area that I'm spending more time doing presentations on, doing videos. I post a lot on LinkedIn about that area, and then I've kind of productized a journey or roadmap again to make it easy for a business owner. So that there's 3 stages of work. There's a number of steps within each of those to try and get them exit ready, because the fact is, if you try and decide that you want to sell your business or exit from your business, it's not going to happen today or tomorrow. It's probably going to be 6 or 8 months to market and sell the business. But actually, you've got to have the business ready to a certain point before that, which could be 2-3 years worth of work to get everything you need in place. So it's about trying to get that knowledge into business owners so that they think about it beforehand. They can start doing some planning slowly, steadily, consistently, rather than suddenly finding that they can't sell their business, or they've suddenly got to do loads of work over a very short period of time, which is very stressful.
And I think you did a presentation recently at our Ignite Business Network meeting, and apologies if I cannibalize the name, but basically it was how to get paid twice for your business, which I think was such a great hook, and how you positioned, business owners they're running their business. They, hopefully get to a point where they're able to take a wage out of it or build a team and their salaries coming out of it. And that's the first one. But the second bit, as you said, is like, how do you get it sale ready that you can get some sort of a dividend out of it, whether it's a lump sum, you're closing your business or selling it on. But what I found fascinating, and I've never heard anybody talking about, is the fact that more people can do it than not. But what I found really alarming was the amount, the statistics that you put on around, one, how many businesses actually sell, which is a tiny percentage of businesses, and that those who do go to sell, how many fail. So talk to us a little bit more about why, and you probably talked a little bit about it, but why that is happening. But what I also found fascinating was that more people, as I said, more people can sell than not, but it's how they systemize the business. It's the processes they have, it's the software they have, it's the documenting of systems and processes that they have. So even if you've got a product, if you can package it that somebody else can take it on, that's something that you can sell on and get some return on it. And I was like, oh, a lot of people don't think about it like that. As you said, liquidate, or just, pass it on, or, just nothing happens. So tell us a little bit more about that, because I think it's a huge opportunity. And as you said, it's a untapped market.
Yeah, it's I was asked a question recently on another meeting I was at, which was, what's the difference between an income generating business and a sellable business? And I think that's what most SME business owners have, is they have a business that gives them an income. So they maybe earn, hopefully a reasonably good salary, and they get dividends or pension and payments into their pension fund out of it. And that's fantastic. But a sellable business then is a business that will do the same thing, but will also operate broadly the same way when they're on holidays, when they take 3 months off, and allows them, when they get to the end of their journey and they say, I want to retire, or I need to retire, or I want to have a change, that business can continue without them. Maybe it might require maybe a job role to be recruited in to replace them. But I used the analogy, I think, during that presentation about a box. What you want is your business to be like a little cardboard box, where that you can pick it up and you can hand that across to the next person. And if you think of your business as turning it into a box, that's really what you're aiming for. And that gives it then the ability to be sold, or to be passed on to the management team, passed on to a third party, whatever exit route you choose. And that's the difference between a sellable business and an income generating business. The income generating one is not like a box. You can't hand it to anyone because it doesn't work without you. And that's,
that was
what a lot of businesses are like at the moment, is that they're very good at income generation, but they're not worth anything to anybody else if you are not absolutely involved in continuing to work in that business.
Yeah, and it was a big point that you put in as well. The more invested the business owner is in the business, in terms of they have to be there to make things happen or make decisions, whatever, the more involved they're in, the less valuable the business is, And I suppose it's, to your point, it's bit by bit designing processes, documenting things, having your SOPs, so that you make yourself more and more redundant. And that redundancy may be because you've got great process and software, or because you've hired other people in to do elements of the job. That means you can extract, and as I say, go away for for a few months of the year, or go traveling, or do whatever you want to do, because now that's your payback for having built up the business. But again, I think it's just such a powerful way, very simple, but a really different lens to the way a lot of people are thinking. And I think a business owner starting, or still at the very start, or anytime is a good time to change, but if you're starting, it would be a really, really good way to think about it. What does the exit look like today, and build to that, because there's very clear focus on why and how you're making decisions about staffing, software, systems, growth, marketing, all of that side of things. It all is directly linked if you do have an end game in mind.
Yeah. So again, if we go back to the analogy of a box, every business is different, but in broad terms, to get to that stage of having a box that's nice, the corners are all turned down, you can hand it to someone else, it's going to involve you, the business owner, not being very much involved in the business, or being involved where there's a clear role that can be recruited when you walk away.
Yeah.
It means having a management team in place. It means having internal systems and processes. So, what do you do to build your pipeline? What do you do on your marketing? What do you do to service your clients? What do you do in terms of the finances and keeping track of everything? If all that's written down, that's your internal process and systems. And then underpinning that is your finance software, your CRM software, your case management software, whatever software, your marketing software in the business. And then, the final part then is around having your financials. So your financials need to tell you exactly what's making money, how your cash is being spent, how much income you're generating, who it's coming from, who your key customers are, contracts in place, all that kind of, supportive stuff. Broadly, if you've got those in place, that's where you've got your box broadly in place, and your business then is something that's got a value to it. And the thing I think I said in the presentation was that the biggest killer of value in any business is owner involvement. So the more involved the owner is in the business, the less of that value is available, and the less sellable your business is. But again, if you get out of the business, build your team, build your systems, put your software in place, make sure you know what's making your money and what's costing you. Actually, you don't need to be involved in the business so much once that's in place, which means then you're delivering on building, a valuable business. And it also means it's probably more fun for you because you don't need to be paying salaries at 12 o'clock on a Saturday night. You probably don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. You can probably take some time off. You can go golfing, or you've got some time to sit on a Monday in a coffee shop and think about what's happening in the business and come back with some brilliant ideas for your team, which is
Yeah.
probably the strength that you started the business with before you got caught up in all of the day to day. So
Yeah.
it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you start and you start making some progress, the rest of the progress gets a bit easier, and then you're getting closer and closer to then building, a business that could be sold, or you never sell, but you've got a very efficient, very effective business running. That means you don't really need to be so involved, and you can just do some other things. But
Yeah.
you know that if someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "Actually, we've been looking at you for a few months. We'd like to
Mhm.
talk about buying your business," you're sort of halfway there, if not more than
Yeah.
halfway there. And then it's just a matter of doing a little bit of extra work then to have something that you can present to someone who taps you
Mhm.
on the shoulder and say, "Well, this is what we're looking for. This is what the business looks like. I can answer all your questions. You can go in and check all the detail you want." And that's really where you want to be.
Mhm. So you said earlier you weren't allowed to go into the history side of things, and you sort of went, ooh, accounting,
Hmm.
not something that I hate, but you're doing it a long time now. So why do you do what you do? Why do you just stick with it? And that's sort of one part of the question, which then leads me into, you set up Sakura because you want to do your own thing. You always had that sort of idea of being an entrepreneur, which obviously then manifested and came true. And we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that you've got the office in London and Dublin, where that's going shortly. But what's the unique selling proposition that you feel you bring to the market? And that sort of comes on the back of why you do what you do.
Um, I think increasing, maybe it's age, I don't know, but I find myself being a little bit more grumpy when people complain about accountants,
Tell us more.
and I think that is partly because in this day and age, I think there's an element of what is an accountant. If I ask five different people about what should your accountant and what does your accountant do for you, I think you get lots of different answers. So some people would say, well, they do my tax return. Someone will say, well, they're my FC, and they give me, direction, and they give me guidance, and they point my strategy in the right direction. Someone else would say, well, they look after all my systems, and they make sure all the systems work smoothly. And someone else will say, they help me with some of my commercial projects. We're building a new factory. We've invested in some machinery. We're launching into a new marketplace or a new product, etc., etc., etc. Or another might say, he does all my tax planning. So we do fantastic tax planning. Very, very different skills, very, very different requirements, very, very different people.
But
And
isn't
so,
it basically meeting people where they're at? Which,
well, I think it's there's a number of different people in those different roles, and I think accountant doesn't cover them all. So I think you've got to find the right accountant for what you need in your business at that moment in time.
yes.
And so
And
some
what
some
you,
accountants they are your traditional. They're really good at compliance. They're really good at guidelines. They're really good at flagging up risks from their experience, and that's great for certain business at a certain level. But you can't complain really about those accountants, because what you need then is someone else at a different level to come in and start, running your monthly meetings, and moving your strategy in a different direction, and dealing with some commercial elements. And that takes a different type of person with different background and experience.
so
So,
if you were giving somebody advice, then, because it is like you could have, like, and I would say this time and time again, you could have 10 website designers, 10 marketeers, 10 accountants, 10 whatever in a row, and everybody's going to show up differently with different experience, depending where they're at on their own journey. What questions, if you were to say to a group of people who are going to set up a business, or who are in the early stages of engaging somebody. And obviously, if you're in the early stages, what you need is not at the stage of growing and scaling and what have you. There's different elements of service that you're going to need. What questions would you ask them or suggest that they ask to find the right fit?
I think it's more about awareness more than anything else. Is that accounting is a really wide term, and so what you need to work out is what do you think you need in your business right now, and then look at the accountant you have and say, well, he's great at that, but I need somebody else to take me here or from here to here, or you know, yeah, find out what you think you need for your business, and then know that there's different accountants with different backgrounds who can do something different, because it is such a wide area, such a wide field now.
Yeah.
That I think maybe there's an education piece that accounting is a very wide and broad field. You need to find the right person with the right experience to take your business to the next step or in a different direction, depending on what you need at your stage of growth.
Okay, so you have your office in London and Dublin. So what was the rationale in having the two offices, and where is it now, and where do you see it going? What are the future ambitions for the business?
Well, I think I'll just go back to the USP briefly. You asked me about that. I don't think I quite answered that, but my USP is that I've got a really varied commercial background of working with small businesses grown very fast, to larger businesses I've worked in slightly more, maybe more corporate or private equity backgrounds. So my USP is, if you want somebody to just do your tax return and deal with deadlines, we can do that as a business. But my USP personally is great deal of commercial experience, business experience, and strategy. And if that's the kind of thing you think you need in your business now, then that's my USP. There's very few things you have done in business that I've not been involved in or seen or had some experience of, and that's sort of where I'm coming from. To move on to the offices, well, I lived in London for about 20 years after I travelled and was in Ireland for a short time. I moved to London because I wanted to live there. I lived in Sydney, I lived in Dublin, so obviously the next best place to go after that is London. So I've been living in London for 20 odd years. And, I think I'm going to be staying there, broadly speaking. But I just got referred some Irish business through friends and family and relatives. So I just put it through an Irish company for a period of time. And then I sort of said, actually, I wouldn't mind spending more time in Ireland personally. All my family, my friends have now all moved back to Ireland. I'm a big Leinster fan. So actually, it's a great opportunity. If I choose my meetings well, my timings well, I can get back and see a chunk of Leinster games while seeing family and friends, while then doing some work. So I think I've just moved to the stage now. I want to turn the Irish office into a full service office, get it up as much as I can to maybe the same level as the London office. And there's business opportunities there, because for some Irish businesses that maybe want to expand into the UK, then they've got an easy way of doing that. And then equally, post Brexit, there are UK businesses that are looking to get access to EU and an English speaking entry point, and Ireland provides that as well. So there's some good business reasons for having both offices where we can help clients on both sides.
Very good, very good. So what, in terms of Sakura Business Solutions, what are the sort of three values that you bring to your clients in terms of the business? Now, as opposed to you, in terms of the business, what are the values that drive how you deal with your clients?
Diligence. Again, everything goes back to getting the basics right. So that's a really core issue for me, is we want to get the simple things done really, really well. Communication. So you mentioned earlier, and actually, what I'll do is I'll give you some documents after the meeting. We've got some documents that explain key elements of a profit and loss and a balance sheet. We've got a document that takes you through our simple process for managing your bookkeeping every week and every month. So I can share that with anyone who wants a copy of that.
Okay,
it's all about diligence. Get the simple things done really well. Communication is explain things to people in plain English as much as you can, because again, some of them won't be interested in any way, shape, or form, but they might just want to know, and some people might want to know a little bit more. So share with them. There's nothing to hide. Finance isn't a mysterious area that people can't understand or you can't make clear to them. So communicate to them and let them know what they need to know. Um, and then the other thing is support and guidance. Probably or historically certainly, maybe less so today with Google, but people used to use their accountant as their sounding board. So if they had questions or queries or what should I do with my business or should I do this or that, their accountant would be the first port of call. So again, we try and make ourselves available and try and, where we can, be proactive to put ourselves in the way so that people, will ask us the questions and then we can give them our honest answer or give them a bit of direction or a few questions.
And we were talking about it earlier before we came on the recording here. We were talking about marketing or marketing, as some people might say, and the diesel train that is the content engine. And you're a little bit unusual as the accountancy practice, let's put it, that is actually embracing the whole marketing side of things. And you said it's bit by bit, grow it bit by bit, but you do your YouTube videos and you're working with the marketeer to develop new content and blogs and stuff like that. Which I also think, some people want to know a little bit, some people don't want, but they want to know that you do it when they're ready. And sometimes it's just a not yet. But I think the power within that and the consistency is that you build up that credibility of expertise to show you're the subject matter expert. So I think there's huge value in that. But you're obviously a little bit different in terms that you're actually going beyond, hey, here's a shiny website. You're actually engaging with people to say, hey, here's some of my knowledge, and you're documenting things and you're writing little ebooks and stuff like that. What made you go down that route as opposed to just having a website and an email and thinking I'm done?
I've tried to do some reading around the topic a little bit. So one person that came across was a guy called Daniel Priestley. And it's taken me a while to get stuck into it, but essentially he's written a number of books, and he is, I call him a guru in some respects. He was on Diary of a CEO recently, and he's blown up since then, but he's been around for a number of years. And he is a very successful entrepreneur in his own right. But a lot of what he puts in his books and what he says in all of his presentations and courses, they're quite simple, straightforward suggestions and things to do. So they're not going to change your life. And he's quite clear about it takes time and effort, and it's not going to happen overnight. But his view was, you've got to start building your own personal brand by doing things personally in your name. It's your business. But what you need to do is try and build your own personal brand. So go out and do presentations, write articles, go on LinkedIn, show your face. And he said, actually, the more personal branding you do, the more people will get attracted to your business. So have your business brand and push on that, but also try and build your personal brand.
Yeah.
And use examples like, Virgin has become really successful, but actually Virgin and Richard Branson are combined. So the more people know Richard Branson, the more people do Virgin work. But equally, even though they know Richard Branson, he does things on his own account, but actually his personal brand has driven a lot of business towards Virgin.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff. So it's about doing all those little things piece by piece by piece. Again, you can't do them immediately, but it's over, a period of a year or two, and trying to just build out your personal brand.
Yeah.
And the more people get to know you, the more then they'll sort of feel they know your business and they'll trust your business as well. So
yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, I'm all about it. I mean, we talk about networking being, you're building up the know, like, and trust factor. And when I hear people going, yeah, I could go to a couple of events a year, and I'm going, how does that build up trust with anybody? How does anybody know anything about you to want to support you or refer you or anything? And people with the expectation of getting referrals before letting people in to get to know who they are and what they're about, who they serve, the value that they add. And I'm going, that's a journey. And, I'd be very vociferous in saying, your dividends and how networking would pay off really, really is intrinsically linked with the effort and intention you put into it. And if you put nothing in, why do you expect something out? In anything in life, that is the same thing. But people and particularly business owners go, I've got my business card, and I go out to a couple of networking events and think it's all just going to happen. And I'm going, no magic bullets here. But if you do it, a bit like compound interest on your pension, it will have a payoff and it will come back around to support you. Might not necessarily in the ways you think it will, but it will come back down to support you. And I think when we walk into the room, and no matter how able or how technically proficient we are in any walk of life and any experience, you know, when I'm speaking on networking, once you cross the threshold to walk into a room, a business meeting, it is about how you are showing up as a human being. And that is beyond your technical ability. You can be technically very, very able and fall apart emotionally because you don't know how to show up and you're not ready and your mind isn't ready. And, you know, they will say that business success is 80% down to mindset and how we manage our mind. And that is massive. And I think more business owners, I would love if they would just really cotton on to that. And, you know, I hope they will listen back and take, there's so many pearls of wisdom and nuggets of advice, you know, to take with you. You know, I just sort of wrote a little synopsis there. You know, I think top tips, if you were starting, I'd say ingrain networking into your week, make it happen, because it's such a great opportunity to build community, but also to work on your business, because other people see different ideas for your business. They are more objective. You know, as I always say, like when we see a business, we see this, but when you've got an eclectic network, they see all of this. And when they bring that wisdom and perspective to your world, in whatever way, you might know how it's going to serve you from one day to the next, but it always will. And things happen for people who show up. So that's huge. I think working on the business is incredibly important. You know, outside of networking, it's, as you say, going to the coffee shop. It's actually letting yourself have time to decompress and think and to imagine and to visualize and to dream and dream big and, you know, have those big, hairy, audacious goals. And I think a third sort of tip that I would take out from our conversation would be meet the experts at the start. Front load some of that and say, right, if I'm going to do a bit of HR, or I'm going to do some sales, or I'm going to have my account set up, or I'm going to do some marketing, what does it look like at the start and how do I get set up? Because so many people think, I'm going to bootstrap. Grand, you'll still save so much money if you have your systems and your process set up right from the start. And for that, right, you need the expert. And that will save you an awful lot of time, energy, and money, but also heartache and pain and, you know, tearing your hair out and all of those things. So they would be sort of things, certainly a piece of advice that I would look at had I been starting and known differently. That's what I would say to somebody starting off on that. What are your own, like you talked about the business values, but what are your own personal values? What do you bring to the table when somebody is working with you?
I think I'll try and use some of the words that people have described me in the past. So I'll lean on a couple of those. So people have said that I'm quite calm and measured. So I think that must be positive, I'm guessing. So I think we spoke earlier before our call, and I mentioned that I'm not always calm and measured, but I like to maybe go to the gym and run it off, or go to the punch bag and clear my mind, and then come back and deal with the issue. The calm and measured. I think I'm quite supportive, I guess. So I like to give ideas, give suggestions, point people in the right direction, but ultimately it's their business and they make the decision. So I'm not trying to force the decision, but I like to try and give people some good options and good reasoning behind why I'm making those suggestions, and try and guide them, and then hopefully then they'll take my advice. And I like to deliver, because actually if I can do the job that I know that I can do, then I think it'll have a real impact on the business, because I've seen it in my career a number of times. So I know if I can get the work done that I need to do, it will impact positively on the business. And if it goes very well, it'll impact very substantially on the business. So delivery.
Very good, very good. So what questions, what should people be listening out to? What questions should people be aware of in order to find leads for you and to be able to refer business into you?
Good question. I suppose there's a lot of different questions I could maybe point at in terms of certain things I worked on or certain things I do. But maybe the best one is ask people what's keeping them awake at night. Because usually if they give an answer that something of a financial nature comes out, then that's a trigger maybe to go, well, maybe have a chat to Damian. So, they might say, oh, God, I'm struggling to, we're doing loads of business, but obviously to struggle to pay the team at the end of the month. That's keeping me awake at night. So that could be an immediate trigger, or it could be, the business doing really well, but I'm a bit stuck and I'm not really sure if it's left right or right left or what to do next. Again, that will come out of that question. So that's probably the question I'd mention. What's keeping you awake at night? And that could be a very good starting point then to refer to.
And then all the stuff that you mentioned earlier. So if you're on a trajectory and want to scale, if you've got that vision, and also if you're looking to get exit ready, there will be obviously another couple to add to that list as well. But yeah, and then I think there's loads of other nuggets that are sprinkled throughout the recording. So there's lots for people to take away there. So where can people find you on social then? How do they connect in with you?
So I'm quite active, as you mentioned, on LinkedIn. So if they search for Damian Connelly, I think FCCA, they'll probably find me on LinkedIn. They should be able to find me. And then we are building out our YouTube channel, Sakura Business on YouTube. So we're putting all of our podcasts. This one, for example, should be up there in the next couple of days. And then I'm just building up a bank of videos. So again, anytime I do a presentation, we put a copy on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to do suites of videos on maybe FAQs or some common questions I get asked by clients. There's a video up there about where did the name Sakura come from. So I've done a video on that. So trying to give people the opportunity to understand the business and trying to then put all those typical questions. And also then a few videos on, why we do things or why you should do certain things. So there should be a reasonable amount of resources up there that people can refer to and hopefully will be helpful for them. So they're probably the two main. Obviously, we've got a website as well. Probably needs a bit of an update, but certainly LinkedIn and YouTube we're focusing on at the moment, and then we'll work on a website afterwards and get that tidied up as well.
Fantastic. So a fun fact. I think you've shared a couple already, but maybe do you have any other fun facts that people don't generally tend to know about you? And if you speak in Japanese as well, that'd be great.
Oh yeah. I think you should have given me that question before this, so I could have practiced with you. You didn't give me that question. A fun fact: I trained as an accountant at the same time as Padraig Harrington, the golfer. So he was in some of my classes, and he was debriefing in a couple of pubs around Dublin at the same time I was doing my accountancy exams. That's one fun fact, I think. I have taught English for a day in a school in Laos a number of years ago, and it was an army school, so there were children of army personnel and there was some army personnel learning English all in this class, so that was quite interesting.
And I realized we have something in common as well, because you were saying earlier that you taught English to Italian and Spanish students. So when I lived in Italy for years, so when I lived in Turin, I used to teach English.
Very good.
In a very, very previous life.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of trying to get people to understand, like, we all have chapters and journeys, and when you start finding those commonalities, you only find them when you start exploring and get curious. So fantastic. Damian, it's been a pleasure having you on. Delightful to have the conversation, to learn more about Sakura Business and where it's going, how you help people, why you do what you do. I think there's a lot that you've shared, so I hope it's going to add a lot of value, both to the Ignite Business Community membership, but also to other listeners. So thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much for having me on. It was